we're here to protect you and the ones that you love. It's a good feeling to know that our efforts aren't going unnoticed.
It actually brought tears to my eyes to know that we have this support.
You're welcome. I must just say you're welcome. It's stressful, but we're not going anywhere.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Bucknell Football Through the Decades. This is Todd Newcomb coming at you from Bucknell. We have a great group joining head coach Dave Cicchini today, featuring the decade of the 1970s. Three Bucknell Hall of Famers will join us, as well as one of our current players, PJ Barr, one of the captains of this upcoming season for the Bison, as we hope to get back to campus and on the field soon. I want to take this second here to thank our sponsor, Geisinger, for all that they do for us as one of our proud partners, and then introduce our guest, and then I'll turn it over to Coach Cicchini, and we'll have a lot of fun with this session. So our first guest today is Mitch Farbstein from the class of 1973. Mitch led the team in rushing in both 1971 and 1972. He had a career-high 206 yards against Gettysburg in 1971, and he had a career-high 5 touchdowns in a game against Lafayette, also in the 1971 season. 47 years after graduation, he still ranks tied ninth on the all-time list for 100-yard rushing games, with 6 in his career. He rushed for 1,752 yards, which ranks 12th on Bucknell's all-time list. He was an ECAC All-East first selection in 1972. He was honorable mention AP All-American in both 1971 and 1972, and he was elected to the Bucknell Athletics Hall of Fame in 1991. Our second guest today is Dr. Michael Axe from the class of 1975. He was a team captain in 1974. He won the Stuart M. Smith Award as the team's top newcomer in 1972, and he won the George Rio Award as the team's top lineman in both 1973 and 1974. Mike was an ECAC All-East first-team selection in both 1973 and 1974. He was honorable mention AP All-American in 1974, and he was a College Division Academic All-American second-team selection as well in 1974. Mike was elected to the Bucknell Athletics Hall of Fame in 2007. Our final guest today from the class of 1980 is Mike McDonald. Mike was a team captain in 1979. He won the Stuart M. Smith Award as the team's top newcomer in 1977. He won the George Rio Award as the team's top lineman in 1980. Sounds very familiar to the other Mike. We have two. It's a privilege to have 2 offensive linemen, by the way, who are in the Hall of Fame on the same call. Mike was also an AP All-American first team selection in 1980. He was an American Football Coaches Association All-American in 1980, and he was elected to the Bucknell Athletics Hall of Fame in 2002. So we've got a great group here joining Coach and PJ. And without any further ado, Coach, I'll turn it over to you and let you ask these guys some questions.
Thanks, Todd. It's great to see everybody. Really appreciate you guys joining us here on this call. I think it's an awesome thing to do to get the alumni back per decade and get a chance to relive some old times here and learn a little bit more about the history and tradition of Bucknell football, and really pleased to hopefully have a future Hall of Famer, another offensive lineman, PJ Barr, who's one of our captains, just got elected captain last month. So we're excited to have him on the call as well. So Michael Axe, we're going to start with the big man. We're going to start with the big O lineman, and then we'll finish with Mitch. But Michael Axe, you are up first. And the first question I have for you is, and for all of you, is to take us back to the beginning and tell us exactly how your recruitment to Bucknell unfolded.
Well, it was kind of serendipitous. Lancaster High was playing Williamsport High, and we were driving up Route 15. And I looked over and I saw this ivy-covered stadium. I said, what would we like to play there? And then I had a successful junior year. And then Doug Dowman from Lancaster, also a Hall of Fame member and played in 2 sports, both football and track and field through the javelin, came to my house and said, hey, you know what? That stadium that you were talking about is Bucknell Stadium. And I kind of knew that by then. And would you like to come up and visit? Artie Wilkins, who was an English major, played offensive guard for the Bisons, took me under his wing. He was my player recruiter at that time, and took me to see the Trojan woman. Now, he knew I was a Greek buff. So I said, okay. So I really enjoyed that. And I kind of decided that was the place. I'd already visited the Naval Academy, South Carolina, William and Mary, some of the other schools. And I said, this was a good fit. And it was a great fit.
Great. Outstanding. Mike McDonald, how about you?
Well, Coach, first of all, it's good to meet you. And congratulations on joining Bucknell. I appreciate it. I know this is
Thank you.
Here. From what I remember Danny Hale, who turned out to be a fantastic football coach. They've named the stadium after him at Bloomsburg. He was my offensive line coach, and he came into Lancaster Catholic, saw some film, talked to me, and I ended up going up to Bucknell. I had been some other places. I remember going to Lafayette, and when the coach left the room, I went around to the back to read what he had written about me. And he came in and caught me. So I came back around. But in any event, I remember going up there. I weighed about 190 pounds. So I took two sweaters on to make myself look bigger. And Coach Curtis, he was the key. I mean, I could tell he was the man for me as soon as I got there. He was a rough, tough, hard-nosed guy, good guy, and so it was a done deal.
All right. Mitch Farbstein, how are you?
I'm doing great, Coach. Great to meet you. And Todd, thank you for inviting me to this party. It's always a pleasure. Always like coming back for the Hall of Fame gathering and so on. Look forward to this year too, hopefully, if it takes place. And Coach, good luck. I hope everything falls into place for you in terms of the season at this point.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. So how I got to Bucknell was I missed most of my football in my junior high school and senior high school. I was hurt in ninth grade, but I had an appendectomy right the second day of school. So I missed that season. I played 10th grade. I got my back injured, so I missed my 11th, the junior year. I played soccer instead, and then I played football my senior year. So nobody was really looking at me. Nobody knew very much about me. But one person who did was the father of Tommy Mitchell, who was, All-American and played for the Colts. And he went to my high school. And I was playing with his brother, and their dad suggested that Bucknell take a look at me, even though I hadn't played that much, and I was going into my senior year. So at that point, Sid Jameson got in touch with me, and he was just spectacular. I mean, it was a great guy. He was the recruiter. Carol Huntress was the coach at the time. By the time I decided to go to Bucknell, Fred Prender took over at the position, so I had no clue what was going to go on. But that's kind of how I ended up at Bucknell. At the same time, when I went for my visit, I met this dude called Doug Nauman, who Mike just mentioned as well. And Doug and I became good friends, and that was also encouraging about going to Bucknell. And then we were roommates for the next 4 years, both. And then we did, obviously, football and track at the same time. So that's how I got to Bucknell.
All right. That's great. Well, let's switch gears a little bit here, and let's talk about the game of football. And again, as someone who played football in the early 90s, it's obvious to me that the game has evolved, transformed, changed over the years. But I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts. Exactly what do you see the biggest differences since playing in the 70s? And if you were playing today, how might you prepare a little bit different than you did back in the 70s? And let's go with Mike McDonald to start us off with that one.
Well, Coach, from an offensive lineman standpoint, I think it's changed a substantial deal with the use of the arms and the hands. That was a big change. I think some of the change has also been driven by safety concerns, taking the head out of the game. They had started that when I was there, discouraging or disclaiming teaching having your head making the first point of contact. But I think with the use of the hands and the arms, it would have changed it a lot for me, because our first point of contact, the way we were taught, was to hit with the upper shoulder and bring the force of the entire body from your heels all the way through like an electricity to explode off. Here now, I see that with the liberalization of using the hands, you can get the hands into people, and there's a hand fighting and a hand placement situation. So obviously I'd have to learn, you'd have to convince me as to the efficacy of that, first of all. And then I'd have to learn that. And then also I think strength training becomes a little bit more important with that type of blocking, because you're not generating the force from your entire body necessarily. You're using your arms and your chest in an extended way. So that would, strength training, even though we strength train pretty hard, back in the day, we did a lot of the Nautilus training, which took us away from the free weight. Penn State started that CAM type weightlifting training with positive and negative resistance. And so I think I would have focused heavily on the free weight training and learn the hand fighting. Had to learn that.
I got you. And now you mentioned your weight coming in to college your freshman year. How big were you when you graduated?
I was 267.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an incredible gain there, particularly without the modern day, supplements and weight training programs that they have here. That's phenomenal. Mitch, how about you?
I think the biggest changes are there are no more freshman teams, which I fully support as a way of creating a camaraderie among players, and they're not thrown in with the seniors and the juniors and picked on and all those kinds of things. So I think, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later on, but I think that was that's been a very big change. And the other thing was size of individuals. When I went to Bucknell, I was the heaviest person on the freshman team at 2'5", 210. And so all my linemen were much smaller than I was. And even as we went through the next couple of years, I was still, bigger than probably 95% of the players on the team. And I was the running back. So I guess, for me, the size has been the big difference. The size and the speed, and a couple of things like Mike was saying in terms of, strength and the size of the individuals just are, it's amazing when I look and there's 300-pound guys on the field now. There was no idea of that back then. Yeah, so that would be my biggest things that I've seen that are different.
Sure. Not only are they 300 pounds, but a lot of them can move like they're 200 pounds.
Yeah, I know. I wish I was that fast when I was there.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, Michael Axe.
Well, I think that the game, I probably always lifted weights, free weights, because that was the way it was done back home. So I was comfortable. I never got into the machines. I thought that they were so I was a power clean, bench press, pull up type of guy. As far as using your hands, they claim that I never had a play I didn't hold, and that's probably true. But I only got caught. I had less than 100 yards of total penalties in my entire 4 years. So I was good at holding. The best story I can relate, though, is that I was playing my senior year at 230, playing blindside tackle. And the individual across from me went about 275, 280, and he had a head start. And the official says to me, 60, you're holding. To which I said, do you see how big he is? So the official had to turn around and look the other way, because he was just, howling about the fact. And I tried not to make it so obvious that I was doing that. But the hand thing was a hard thing. And I still have a neck that's hard to fit shirts, because I did lead with my head. And that was a way that was taught. And I felt that the only way that I successfully not pith myself was to have a neck that could handle that kind of battering. So that's it.
Wow. And now, were you ever taught the chicken wing blocking, get the elbows out and
I never had them both out. I would only have it as a tool to keep them from, or forcing them to the outside. And I would use my offhand as a way to drive through with that. Now, that was a lot easier as a guard. When they put me at backside tackle, then obviously that arm was there if I needed to be there. Yeah, and that was, you actually used your arm instead of your hand, and just hope they didn't grab your pad. It was just so easy to do a swim move when you had your arms out like that. We made a lot of defensive tackles look really good.
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. Good. All right. Well, we've been talking a lot about technique, and I can see PJ's foaming at the mouth here. He's getting all excited, all this offensive line talk. So I'll kick it on over to him. I know he's got some questions for you guys.
Yeah, the first one I have is, like, what advice would you give to myself or any of my teammates now about the college, like the football experience at Bucknell? Like, what should we be taking from this?
This is Mitch. First, get the education, okay? And what's been really proven out, particularly in the COVID world to today, education counts, and having the right kind of jobs and being in good position. The football has to be secondary, but the football is also a great motivator for you to succeed in different ways than you would from your education. And so you really need to have a good balance between those two. And if you do that, I think, going forward in your career, your family and everything else, you understand how to maneuver things when they become difficult. So that's the advice I would give.
Awesome.
Well, I'll go second. What I think you should take away from this is going to be the last time you play football unless you go to the pros. And it's the last time you really should enjoy football, because once you get in the pros, it's a business if you're fortunate enough and talented enough to go there. So enjoy these times. I don't know that I did. I think I was too busy with classwork, and I don't know that I really enjoyed my athletics nearly as much as I should have. And we'll talk more about that later with some of the other proposed questions. But please enjoy your teammates, enjoy your time. Your high school days were good. That's why you're playing in college. That's why you're the captain. These are the most challenging times because the competition is challenging. So please enjoy the time you're playing.
I would recommend that you try to keep in mind that you're playing the game, and that although you have to play within the system your coach has directed you, and you have to play with the techniques that the coach has directed you or your individual coaches, the unique thing about you is you. And I wouldn't subordinate what you do well or your personality or fit within any certain mold that you think you have to fit into. Let all of those things that you're taught and given attach to your personality and let it fly. I mean, what I would resist is someone trying to put you in a certain mold or a certain identity that fits the fair-haired boy or the quote-unquote all-American boy. God gave you specific talents, specific strengths, and let them fly within the context of what you're given from your coach.
Awesome.
That's some great advice. Great job. Okay, let's switch things. Let's go. How about, what was your most memorable experience as part of your time with the Bucknell football program? Michael Axel, you're back up at the top here. We'll start with you.
Well, I remember we were playing UMass and we had to hold on to the ball, and we had to get a first down. And Stan Durtan, who played next to me, another Hall of Famer, and he looked at me and said, "We got to make this double team to keep the hold of the ball." And Mitch ran the ball, and we got the first down. And that let us keep the ball until a great interception at the end of the game. But since Mitch is on it, the second thing that I remember most is we're playing up in Maine, and it's Saturday morning before the game.
You're going to tell this story, aren't you?
I am. So he's out in the parking lot with a butterfly net collecting insects because he needed it for his invertebrate class. But I didn't get a picture of it, but it was the best. Okay, so I had to take a really cute story. But that's what we were at Bucknell. We were using every opportunity to make our academic things done. And he knew that they had insects in Maine that he didn't have as part of his collection. So it was ingenious. But who would have thought to do that?
Michael, thank you for that.
You got to have a chance to respond to that, Mitch. I got to hear your side of this story.
Well, he's actually right. He really covered the whole thing, because I knew up in Maine I was going to find different insects that time of year. And we had to make this, box with all the different insects we found and so on. So I thought, that would be a pretty good thing. And we didn't play the Akron Yellow Jackets anymore, so I couldn't bring back one of the Yellow Jackets from Akron. So I ended up, running around the parking lot or in the fields. Picking up bugs. So, Michael, I'm impressed that you remembered that because I had forgotten it.
I can honestly say in over 25 years of coaching, I don't think I've ever caught a player out collecting insects pregame. I think that's
Or in our teeth,
outstanding.
anyway.
Well, we're on you, Mitch. I know obviously that's not your fondest memory as part of the Bucknell football program,
No.
but let's hear your turn.
I actually have two. The first one kind of piggybacks on what Mike just said about Massachusetts in my senior year, because I'm the elder statesman on this call, I think, pretty much, even the coaches and everything. We beat Massachusetts, which was number 5 in the country. The next week or the week before, we had beaten Colgate, which is really always a big rivalry. And then we went down to number 1 Delaware, and we were winning into the third quarter 3-0. They were just too big, too strong, and eventually they won. I think it was 20-3. But that combination of those 3 games were amazing, and they tore down the goalposts. Our students tore down the goalposts, which was, I don't think it had ever happened before. So that was great. The second one is a personal one, totally personal, and that's when I got votes for the Heisman Trophy and was written up in Life magazine. That carries me to this day. You know, people still remember that when I go back to Bucknell, or people who would look me up for, you know, my business career, find that kind of listing. So, you know, that's my 15 minutes of fame more than anything.
Yeah, that's outstanding. I wonder if you would be the only Bucknell football alum that you know of that's received votes for the Heisman?
That I know of, that's basically it.
Wow.
And the other interesting part of that, I met the guy who wrote. He was the bureau chief in Washington, D.C. And I won't tell you the whole story, but a couple years later, when I was announcing for Bucknell when I was in graduate school, he asked one of the coaches to introduce him to me. And I talked to the guy. He's a really nice guy and everything. He said, I want to get your autograph. And I said, why? He said, all his colleagues would say, there is nobody out there playing football that's named Mitchell Farbstein, because there's no Jew who would get a vote for the Heisman Trophy. So that was the rest of the story.
All right. Good stuff. All right, Mr. McDonald, you're up with your best Bucknell football memory.
Well, I'll call it best because it's the most prominent. It sticks with me to this day, and it's a loss. We're up in New Brunswick playing Rutgers. The team's loaded with future NFL players. I'm playing against a guy who's a D1A, going to be a D1A All-American. Got a nose guard that's the honorable mention All-American. They had broken my leg the year before in the first play, so I was ready to go. We were all ready to go. And we're winning. We're beating them 16-14, we're losing 16-14 late in the fourth quarter. We line up from the 40-yard line to kick a field goal from the right hash. And Timmy Dunn, who was our quarterback and field goal kicker, kicks it to go ahead 17-16 with very little time left. And then I hear the offensive coordinator yelling. I still hear it ringing in my ears. There was a flag on the field. They called us the illegal formation. We went on balance because we were on the right hash. So we had 2 guys to the right of the center into the boundary and 4 to the field. The guy just looked on the right side where there were only 2 guys, and he made a mistake. He threw a flag. Backed us up 5 yards. He missed the field goal. We went home. We lost 16-14, and then Rutgers, 3 or 4 weeks later, went down to Knoxville, Tennessee, and beat Tennessee, 17th ranked Tennessee. So I still consider the fact we beat those guys. My wife, I told my wife that was going to be a question. She just shook her head and just said nothing. She knew what I was saying. I can't.
You've heard the story before.
Yeah. Have you? Yeah.
All right. Good. All right. Well, next question. We're going to start. We'll break it up a little bit. We're going to talk. I'm going to ask one just of the linemen, and then afterwards I'll ask Mitch. So we'll start. We'll stick with you, Mike McDonald. So as an offensive lineman, do you realize? Yeah, obviously, as an offensive lineman, I'm assuming back in the 70s, just like today, you just don't reap the praise with all the hard work that you put in. You're one of the more anonymous players. So that being the case, what brought you satisfaction on the field? And what was it about the way that you played the game that you think caused you to become a Hall of Famer? So both of you guys are Hall of Famers. So Mike McDonald, we'll start with you, and then Mike Axe, you can answer it.
Well, as far as playing offensive line, PJ, maybe you can confirm this, or Doctor, you can confirm this as well. When you're running the ball and you're getting 4 or 5 yards a pop, and you're just grinding the ball down the field, and you know you're going to do it the next play, all the world is in you. I mean, the fans are there. All of them are inside of you, not outside of you. And it's a rhythm and it brings a joy that you can't even explain. And from a personal standpoint, you know, I took it as a personal challenge, me against the guy I was playing against, or me against the backer I was blocking. And it got to the point where I don't know how balanced this is, but it's true. My play, I think, what distinguishes me is almost borderline on a violent method of playing. And that's a little different than it is today. I don't want to say it was an MMA bout, but there was a lot of physical things going on, and that brought the taste to me as well. So those two things, they bring a greater joy than saying for a player of the game. Just being in that rhythm with your teammates, knowing you're dominating. I think that was the best.
Great. How about you, Mike Axe?
The whole situation with play is that as an offensive lineman, you want them 3rd and 1. You want to be the guy blocking for 3rd and 1. You want the coaches to have the confidence that you're the guy they want to go over, or smarter yet, they're going to fake to your side because they know that they're going to be coming that direction and they run an exactly opposite. But your play had influenced what the coaching staff was going to do, both positive. The second thing that I never felt that I wasn't recognized, because the award came with my sophomore year, just like with Mike, and also throughout the time I was there. So I always felt that I was recognized. And as it turns out, being involved with the Delaware coaching staff years thereafter and being down here and being their team physician for a number of years, I knew what those coaches who recruited me, as well as I played against, thought of me. And most of the time they were nice.
Good. All right. Cool. All right. So let's get a question for the running back. Mitch.
Why do we say that like with such disdain? I don't understand it.
All right. As a running back, you
Yes.
know the importance of the offensive line.
Yes.
Is there a favorite offensive lineman that you like to run behind? And if so, why?
How can you actually ask me that question on this
Slightly
call?
loaded. Slightly loaded.
Slightly loaded. From the butterfly
I know his
collector.
answer. I know his answer.
Yeah, go ahead. What's the answer?
Stan Durtan.
That's the second one. See,
Okay.
you were, Mike, okay, because the beauty of, because you were playing guard, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what I had learned in math early on was the shortest distance between 2 points was my stance to the goal line was up the middle. I couldn't run over our quarterback. I couldn't run over our center, but you would move, and that's the hole. So it was you. But Stan, because I played with him longer, was a great player too, and I love running behind him as a tackle. And so it's the combination of you and Stan.
All right.
But thank you.
Good stuff. Outstanding. Good. Now, if someone were to ask you to describe your own style of play, or just describe Mitch Farbstein as a football player in general, what would you say?
Probably clueless. When you're a running back, Mike was saying, Mike McDonald was saying, you're playing against the same small group of people all the time on the field, right? People in front of you, the people beside you. But as a running back, you're playing against everybody all the time, figuring out the holes, figuring out how to, maneuver, figuring out how to just run people over. So, and that was my best skill. I wasn't real fast. I mean, 210 was a good size at that time. But my best skill was, luckily I was born with a lot of strength without even working out that much. And it was just running people over. And, to my detriment, I probably could have gained more yards running sideways sometimes, but, that wasn't my style. And that's really who I was, just kind of full steam ahead and get out of my way.
Yeah. A little bit like a John Riggins style of a player.
Sure. Absolutely.
Larry Zonka.
Larry Zonka.
There goes another good one.
Definitely not an O.J. Simpson or any of those guys who were playing back there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right, cool. Well, let's have PJ take a turn. I know he's been a guy he's actually played a couple of different positions on the offensive line for us at tackle and guard. But what do you have to ask these gentlemen here, PJ?
Yeah, my next question is, so post-college or right at the end, what advice do you have for networking and finding the right job coming out of college?
PJ, you have to identify who you want to talk first.
Michael, we'll start with you then.
Okay, so what I think that you should do is that you should demand from your coaches to have mentorships from the alumni that want to be involved in the various careers that you're considering. And then when you tell us the direction you'd like to begin, you want to take that attitude you have as an offensive lineman and take the toughest internship on the toughest project. And trust in your education that you have at Bucknell, that they have taught you how to think and that you're capable of handling anything they're going to give you. So that would be take a tough internship, use the contacts you have, and take on the toughest projects.
Mike, we'll start with you next. We'll go to you next.
Well, PJ, the Bucknell alumni, that's a treasure, and they're good. They're good to each other, and I know of countless examples of guys in my era that got jobs because of their contacts with Bucknell alumni, and they've done very well. I think there is a mentorship program to some degree because I've had some players in my area that I've talked to a couple of times. I think what would enhance it, this may be going beyond your question, is we're able to match you with Bucknell alumni that are in the same field of your field of endeavor, because they not only could they hands-on help you, right, the job, which is, gosh, it's important given the world we've left all you guys with, but also can give you more firm advice because they're in the same field. So if that was capable, if you're able to get that information, not only who are the alumni can I approach, but in the same field you want to go. Like you want to be a coach, for instance. Now you've got some contacts like that. But Bucknell football contacts as coaches, I mean, I could give you some. There's some of them that are still around. So I would see if you can hone in a little bit more narrowly if possible on people who could concretely help you and or concretely give you advice in the same field of endeavor.
Awesome. And Mitch?
I guess I'm left, huh? No, I think both the mics have given you a good direction. My only comment would be, perseverance, like you do on the field and everything else. It's a tough world out there, especially depending on what your major is and so on. But the other thing is, don't worry about failure in your first couple years of your career. Find out where you fit. And sometimes the first or second or third job will not be your fit, but eventually you want to get stable and feel comfortable that maybe you can write out your career or at least have a good run with those companies, because I hire a lot of people. And what I find is if you have bouncers that are jumping from job to job to job, you really aren't that interested because they're probably going to do it to you too. So that would be my additional advice that I would give you.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you.
Good stuff. You taking notes, PJ?
Oh, always.
So anyway, I know that PJ is interested in entering college football coaching. So in terms of internship and mentorship, he's got a bunch of really knowledgeable coaches here who are excited about helping him along his path as well. But let's talk about something a little bit different. Let's look back at your own experience at Bucknell, either on the football field or in the classroom. Looking back at things, is there something that you would, if you were able to go back and do it again, do things a little bit differently? And Mitch, we'll start with you.
Okay. I think the biggest one, I reflect on this a lot of times, especially having Mike here, who was in my fraternity. I wouldn't join a fraternity again. Okay. I think that was a mistake. And the reason I say that is not that I didn't like the guys in the fraternity. Most of them were my teammates and everything. I didn't get exposed to other cultures, other types of people who were at Bucknell. And I always look back at that and kind of regret that I didn't have other types of friends. And I think that's the biggest thing that comes to mind. I mean, the biggest thing at that point for me also was the influence the Vietnam War had on me. Okay. And thinking, here I was, a bioeducation major my freshman year. I used to think about the classroom more than I thought about the football when I was on the field, because, if I didn't succeed in the classroom, I'm going to Vietnam. So it was a whole different thing going on at that time, similar to some of the things that are going on today. And so that was the other thing. And getting mentally better prepared to deal with that would have been something I could have tried to do better.
Interesting. All right, Mike McDonald, how about you?
Oh, Mitch, that was interesting. I appreciate that, especially the Vietnam War aspect.
Right.
Me, the one thing sticks out of my mind is that I didn't. I had an agent that wanted to represent me after it was all over, as I was trying to go forward, and I, in my arrogant blindness, didn't think I needed an agent. Can you believe that? And so I didn't sign up with an agent, and I think it would have been better shot had I done so. And so I still have the paperwork. I look at it any time that I get borderline into an arrogant or prideful state. I'll just look at that and remember.
I got you. All right, Michael, how about you?
I'd have been more positive, as funny as that may sound. I was so fearful that I'd have to return to the inner city of Lancaster and that I would fail, that I was constantly worried about failing. The football part of it wasn't the issue. The academic part of it was the issue. When I was an incoming freshman and highly recruited by Coach Prender, Fitz Walling was an administrator who met with the students. And he point blank told me to go somewhere else because he didn't think I'd graduate from Bucknell. He didn't think that I had the academic prowess to be able to be successful in that environment. And I think that it really negatively impacted me by being around so many smart people that I didn't know that I belonged in that academic sphere. And that was troublesome. Now, obviously, as would have it, I get accepted to medical school in my senior year, having gone from the first semester of 2.25 to graduating with a 3.3. So I had a lot of 3.75s and 4.0s at the end. And I did send Mr. Walling a copy of my acceptance to medical school, but that's kind of in keeping with when you try to tell someone that perhaps they didn't believe in you.
Yeah.
But I will offer to you, I should have been more positive. I should have seen the successes I was having academically. I should have seen that I belonged, but I realized more that I belonged at Bucknell after I left Bucknell than I did while I was at Bucknell. Now that's kind of a little late getting started. So that said, I'd have been more positive, and that's it.
Okay, good. All right. How about giving us all an update? You may have some old teammates that might get a chance to watch this video here. So just if we could go around, everybody could just update on your personal life, where you're living, your career, family, so on. And Michael Axe, we'll start with you.
Okay, so I'm in Wilmington, Delaware, or Newark, Delaware. I live on campus at the University of Delaware. I'm a group that was 4, a founding partner of a group that was 4, and now we're 27. I'm remarried to a physical therapist that's a world-renowned star. We have 5 children between us. We got orthopedic surgeons, chief deputy attorney generals, researchers, college professors. We have a pretty good hit on our 5. I'm about to retire. It's been 35 years. I got 1 year left, 30 years as a college professor at UDPT. I got this is the last course I'm giving as we speak. We're in that last session. And I'm looking to take my energies elsewhere and do something else. So that's my life.
All right. Good. Mitch, what about you?
I live in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, with Southeast Pennsylvania. I have 4 children between the ages of 21 and 28, 2 girls, 2 boys. None of them went to Bucknell, by the way. I did marry a Bucknell gal who had graduated about 8 years after I did. We were married for about 22 years, still have a good relationship, but we're married is the operative word. I'm in the computer field, been there since about 79. So about 40 years in computers, and I run our government division for our company in the sales area. And I travel over the country playing softball still.
Nice. All right. Staying fit. Mike, how about you?
I'm in Lancaster. I'm married. I have 2 children. My son's 31. He's a lawyer with me, and my daughter's 28. She works for a social service agency administering benefits for the elderly throughout Pennsylvania. So I'm a trial lawyer. I'm a civil trial lawyer. I've been doing it for 35 years. We represent individuals against big, powerful entities. So it's been a 35-year fight, continues to be. And I think it's good. I'm glad I have that outlet.
Good. All right. PJ, it's your turn for a question.
Yeah. So the next question I have is there a teammate that you admired the most through your career at Bucknell, and why?
I'll go. It was probably Doug Nauman. We just had, like I mentioned earlier, just kind of an amazing bond from the time we met when we were being recruited through those 4 years. And Doug was the most dedicated, diligent person I ever met he was a geology major, loved rocks, and he was very studious. And he would be at the library 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, always working, always trying to get better, where I was just not that type of person. But he was also a great teammate, both in football, very dedicated and outstanding defensive lineman, and my teammate on the track team as well. So we spent an awful lot of time together, but it was always a very, very positive experience. And so in terms of admiring somebody as a teammate, it was definitely Doug Nauman.
Cool. Mike, you can go next.
Which one? There's 2 of them.
Michael Axon.
Okay. Doug Nauman and Stan Durtan. You heard about Doug, but Stan Durtan was my big brother. At that time, I only weighed 215 starting at guard and as a sophomore. And I remember against on several games, particularly UMass, I was having my hands full against this big guy. And I needed help. I needed him to chip him. I needed to do everything I can until I got my confidence back. And that was the way he always was with me, that if he knew I was in trouble, that he would help. So I appreciated his help.
And last but not least.
Yeah, PJ, when I was a sophomore, one of our captains was a guy by the name of Bill Clifford, and he played guard. And I would see him get taped up before the game. He had 2 bad shoulders. Imagine playing guard with 2 bad shoulders. So the kind of tape job that I saw them do on him was amazing. It was something like I've never seen. And that wasn't his only ailment. But he came out there, and I knew every time he hit somebody, it caused him a lot of pain. And I marveled at his courage and his toughness to be able to be that much impaired. I don't mean impaired, but that much in pain, and still carry out as a captain offensive guard.
It's awesome.
Shoulder surgery's come a long way since the 70s. A whole lot of laborums being done back then.
Yeah,
I can say that with reliable confirmatory yes.
I hear you. Good. All right. Well, let's look at kind of the state of Bucknell football over the years and how it's grown. Just any general thoughts that you guys would like to make about the current state and how it's grown. Mike McDonald, we'll start with you.
Well, I've noticed the level of competition has increased. The quality of your opponents. Like Coach last year? You guys played Temple. You played William and Mary. You played a number of tough games. I mean, it seemed like week in, week out, you had a tough game. Then you went to your Patriot League. You know, once in a while, we had a breather. You know, we played Westchester. You know what I mean? We have a game against Duquesne. I mean, we play Rutgers, and we come home and play Gettysburg. So, yeah, the level of the competition you guys are taking on is great to see. I was sorry to see last year, that was before you got there, the level of where the program was at that time. And, you know, but I'm glad to see what's happening now. I watched your Lehigh game, and I know that was an emotional one for you too.
Yes.
But I saw guys bringing it in that game. I saw that you knocked down 2 quarterbacks. So when I start seeing that level of physicality, which leads me to believe that it's a level of spirit and life, I think you're on a good road. So, but overall, over the years, yeah, I've been impressed. Bucknell's playing people, and they're not afraid to play anybody. But I hope things continue to get better.
Yeah, I know our players relish that level of competition. They're excited to play. You know, our next opponent's going to be Army, so another FBS opponent, and you know, it's a challenge. Certainly, our non-conference schedule was as tough as they come a year ago. This year, it's not much easier, maybe a tiny bit, but not by much. But it really, I think our football team really grew last year. You know, through those early struggles against such good competition. So when we did get to a game, you know, that Lehigh game you referenced, I mean, I think I said it to the press after the game, that was one of the most physical college football games I've ever been a part of. I mean, it was just every play was a big hit, somebody going down, injuries, people having to deal with the pain, play through pain. And it was just an absolute war for 60 minutes. And I think our players were really prepared for that contest because of some of the level of competition that they had faced prior to going into those types of games.
Plus, obviously, you inspired them to play.
Well, yeah, it was nice. It was definitely nice to get the big win, especially at home. You know, that's a place where I know I struggled to play at. Christy Mathewson Memorial Stadium was not a place I enjoyed playing at back in my days. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, I think you had a lot of good play sites otherwise. But the only other thing I'll add is we never lost to an Ivy League team. I couldn't stand playing them. When we went to Brown or we went to Cornell, and the air of those places as if they were superior, that just drove me even worse. And we went to Penn. You know, it's all different every year, but we never lost to those that ilk. I'll put it.
Yep. That's great. Michael Axe, what about you?
I can approach this a little differently. I would have rather had winning seasons and played competition, the Patriot competition, and not played above ourselves. And I know that PJ will talk about the fact that it's nice to play at that next level if you don't lose 6 teammates in the process of playing at that level.
Yep.
So being a team physician and on the field a lot through my entire career, whenever we played up, regardless of who it was, we lost 4 or 5 players, and we didn't have the numbers that these big quality schools have. If you lose your quarterback, you as a coach know that, did you really want to play up that week? Okay. So if you're getting a payday and it's helping the program and it helps your budget, I understand it. Okay. I don't endorse it. I understand it. And PJ, it's nice to say you played against some guys who went on to play in the pros. We all had that happen to us. Mike probably more than most. But I think the Patriot League is a wonderful league, and I think we should stay there. And I don't think we should play up too much, maybe 1 game a year. And I think we should have a winning season.
Yeah, I think that sums up the argument that goes back and forth amongst head coaches and administrators all throughout every Patriot League, and to a certain degree, Ivy League school as well. Mitch, how about you?
I mean, to be honest with you, I am not real in tune to how the program's changed. I know it's changed. It's been, you know, a roller coaster ride in some ways. Before I got there, Bucknell was part of the MAC. Then we were independent. And then obviously we joined the Patriot League. I think being part of a league is important. And, you know, hopefully the Bucknell will continue down that path. Playing independents all the time or even teams from other leagues, you feel like you lose something. You never win that. I remember when there was the Boardwalk Bowl our senior year in Atlantic City, and we had a great senior year, other than that real loss to Delaware, number 1. We didn't get invited. University of Massachusetts, who we beat, went to it, and because we weren't really part of a league, they were part of a league, and so I see that there are changes, but to be specific, I think it's the same thing. You'll be there, and you'll have your successes, right? And you may change how the program looks going forward. Every coach that's been there changes the look of the program at that moment in time, but it's an isolated period of time. And then the next coach comes in and they set the direction. So this is the roller coaster thing I'm talking about in terms of where the program is, where the program was, where the program will be. All those things, those factors kind of contribute to that. So I really don't have a statement that clarifies what I just said, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, I think it has being in the Patriot League, and as the Patriot League stands now, it's a great conference, just from the standpoint of you have all like-minded schools, schools where academics is clearly the number 1 priority. Football is a close second, but it's clearly number 2, and you have a pretty good degree of parity within the league right now. Pretty similar academic requirements. You don't have much of an outlier that, hey, these guys can get anybody in that they want and these guys can't. There's a lot of parity that exists, and it's a pretty stable league right now as well. And I think it's a great spot, a great place for Bucknell, not just in football, but in a lot of sports. In most of our sports, we compete in the Patriot League. So it's a great spot, and it's a great benchmark to see how you are doing with the certain restrictions, because there's no doubt that the Ivy League and the Patriot League have a little bit more restrictions than other conferences that are out there, not just in the Northeast, but in the entire country at the FCS level. But it's relative parity. I always kind of compare it to a little bit like NASCAR. It's not like IndyCar racing, it's NASCAR. There's a lot more rules and things, but in the end, it's all designed to keep it fairly a close race. And what we had this past year, I think, kind of resembled that, where we finished in 3rd place, but coming back from starting the season 0-5 to finishing off with a win against Fordham may have gotten us a share of the league championship, just in that short 6-week period of time. To see things turn around like that, it's a fun league to be a part of. So I think that support group's definitely in place, and that hopefully can springboard us to some continued success here coming down in the future. So, all right. So last question here. We'll wrap things up. Last question today will be, who is the teammate you admired most throughout your career and why? And Mitch, you get to go first on this one.
I think we did that one already.
We did that question.
Oh, we did. I'm sorry.
Come on, coach, pay attention.
I'm on the wrong one. Here we go. What advice would you give me as the current head coach of the program?
Okay. Given that I really don't know you, okay, here's what I could say by example. My freshman year, this guy named Bill Lane, who was, 3-sport, just an amazing athlete at Bucknell, took the freshman team to a 5-1 record. The way he did this was his ability to truly and honestly connect with every player, even though he did not recruit them, being his first year back at BU, and he got the best out of us. And the reason was, you could trust the guy. He didn't try to pit us against each other for positions and everything else. He encouraged us, to do battle when it was the right time to prove ourselves. But he was just very approachable and very honest. And in reality, we all wanted to play for him more than ourselves. And that's why we had a very, very good team. Kind of when the freshman team moved up, unfortunately, all that was lost. And but it did show that this group of players that were from all over, Eastern United States could get together and really come up with a great team. So, getting that connection and having, your players really feel great about you I think is the utmost importance in getting a team to win.
Great. Outstanding. Thank you very much. Michael Axe, how about you?
I think you need to keep the freshmen together as a group. And I really think that the inner city group, the kids that are coming to Bucknell that may have not been exposed to the prep school atmosphere and the monies associated with that, they don't necessarily know how to dress, how to eat, what to read, and who to know. And unless you're taking that group, particularly that inner city group, that you're that first generation or maybe late second generation, if you're not focused on them, you're going to have trouble keeping them in school, number one. But I think they'll have a much better identity if you do. So I would have many more freshman functions amongst the teams where they get together, that they identify themselves as a freshman. Whether it's a freshman sing or all the other things that go with those things, that if you're not involved in fraternities, that they need to have an identity, and that identity needs to be the other freshman players.
Great. Outstanding stuff. All right, Mike McDonald, you got the last word here.
All right, Coach. Well, when I knew this question was going to be asked, I said to myself, how in the heck am I going to give this college football coach any advice on coaching him? So if this is too surface, forgive me. Bucknell was great for me, not only academically but socially. If there was one element that I had that needed development, it was in the social area. And so, especially in my field that I've gone into, that's a necessary thing. But with that said, I don't think it's inconsistent for someone to be maturing socially and academically, and at the same time being close to violent on the football field. I think there's a balance there. It might be a little hard combination, but I think the mistake to make, and this goes back to what I said before, was to take these players and make them into a certain mold. Expect them to be all, instead, Stepford wives, Stepford men, all a certain. The great thing about a football team is you take all these different personalities and all these different experiences and you mold them into one. And to overcoach a guy, to expect a guy to act a certain way, rather than give him the tools and let it fly. I mean, if I didn't have the right coaches, I had two great coaches that saw it the way I did. If I didn't have those coaches, Coach Curtis and Coach Hale, with their view, I would have been thrown off the team. I would not have agreed, nor would I have fit in any mold that they would have tried to put me in. And when I see or hear that happening, it gets me really upset. And so that would be my only, to try to resist overcoaching guys and let what they have, let it fly.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, I think that as true as that was back in the 70s, I think that part of the Bucknell experience and the football and the world just surrounding college athletics, that's just as important as ever. So thank you very much for that. Thanks to all three of you guys for sharing your words. We appreciate you guys being here. I'm going to kick it back over to Todd to wrap things up.
Thanks, Coach. And first of all, PJ, thanks for taking the time this morning to join us, and best of luck with your continued training. And hopefully we'll see you and your teammates back on campus real soon. We're all looking forward to that. And Mike, and Mitch, thank you. You guys have all been great supporters over the years to the Bucknell football program, and this was a great opportunity to get some really good conversation from you. And we appreciate taking the hour out today to join us, and I hope we see each of you at a game real soon. We don't have all the answers right now. Coach will attest to that in terms of what the season's going to look like, or what the stands are going to look like, or what's going to happen, but we're all keeping our fingers crossed, and I hope you three all stay safe and healthy, and your families as well. And to all of you that were watching today, have a great day, and go Bison.